with time, we'll be able to get back to more normalcy. Uh, David, what do you have in store for us today?
Yeah, today is kind of personal, and I'm certainly hoping that the Romans are going to enjoy many, many, many years together. And but this has been a tough time, and I'm really so sorry to hear about people we have lost. And Wendy and I have lost some people, no close relatives, but we're a little worried about it. Hoping to get our vaccine soon. My father passed away about 35 years ago, and I have to say I'm getting over it now. Another 15, 20 years, and I may actually be over it. But I had the good fortune of meeting Wendy's father about 10 years later, and really we got along famously. And then when he passed away, on the way to his funeral in Shiva, I wrote this elegy. And I knew that Wendy's dad loved the cremation of Sambagi. He absolutely adored that poem. So this poem for him is in the same cadence as that. It's called Elegy for Dad. To cherished dad, I was so glad to join your family. Your love of life and of your wife were wondrous things to see. Your sense of fun made everyone smile when they heard you say a little joke that was the stroke that we needed to hear that day. You'd always fight to do what's right, no matter what came due. But you didn't boast about the host of things that worked, of times that worked for you. Your sage advice was always nice for family and friends to hear. Most of all, you stood 10 feet tall in the hearts of your most dear. Dad and Mom, it must be fun to remember your children for. Joni and Gail and Wendy of Vale and Sandy made one more. Your pride never hid in what they did, but the thing you never knew was that each one seems, in hopes and dreams, to follow after you. We sadly watched the terrible cost the years were to your health. We shared your hell every time you fell and did what we could to help. You lost your sight, but not your fight. When we asked, are you in pain? You put on a smile that stretched a mile and said, I can't complain. My dad, you know, from years ago, when Wendy and I were small. When Daddy died in 85, I took quite a fall. But 12 years passed, and then at last, you offered me once more a chance to shout, Hi, Dad! No doubt, that feeling made me sore. I miss you, Dad. I wish you had more time to spend down here. Wherever you go, I want you to know that I feel you are still so near. The trips we took would fill a book, but what was second to none was the pleasure I felt that life had dealt me the honor to be your son. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Wow.
What David has mentioned is something that's very important. Uh, when we last met, we spoke a little bit about the beginning of this book about family. And we started to talk about parenting because what happens when a single child becomes the favorite, and it becomes very, and so what David was reading is it's a very personal type of poem. It gives us a lot of insight into David and his family, Wendy's family. We are in the process of reading about the family relationship, and all of a sudden, the story has deviated from a chronological story that we're reading to a very personal aspect in the life of Jacob and his relationship with his children. And it becomes very important because we see similarities and we see differences among the children. with regard to their parents and regard to their grandparent and great grandparents. So yes, the relationship is everlasting. And we are going to talk a little bit about parenting, because for 17 years, and we're reading, we have, the last we read this, Joseph has been the favorite of Jacob, to the point which last time we read that he was still the person that would give information to Jacob on what the other sons, or the other brothers, if you will, were doing. So it's like the messenger. And we also have learned that the other siblings developed a lot of animosity towards Joseph. And so what I'd like to do is just digress for a moment about the ways in which we perceive our siblings. For those of you who have not gone into, a family, become a family member when there are no other siblings and you're all alone, it may be harder to understand some of the feelings that are mentioned. But I'm going to ask a couple of questions. How do siblings respond to this? And how do parents respond to having multiple children? And I think that becomes important before we start reading the Joseph story and the Tamar story. And like that, we need to have some underlying knowledge and impression about what is going on here, so we can relate on a more personal level to what we're being told. So, and those people who have been a member of a family with multiple siblings, even one sibling. Bless you. Bless you, Larry.
Thank you.
Anyway, if you would just take a few words and say, what were some of the stresses that you encountered growing up? Yes, Marcia. Marcia, you are muted.
This is very personal. I had one sister. We were 4 years apart. And I remember as a little girl, she had a song she sang to me. And it was about, my mother's name was Molly. It was, oh, Molly and me, and baby makes three. Mm-hmm. And then you came along and spoiled the song.
Oh, that's cute.
Okay. So did you have, you had to learn how to share, okay? Share time and things like that. Yes. What else? Anyone help? Oh, yes, Pastor Bruce, and then Suzanne.
I was the youngest of 5. There was actually one born ahead of me that passed away at birth by about, I think, 5 or 6 years ahead of me. But I was the way youngest of 5. So I get a little bit of the Joseph Benjamin stuff thrown at me automatically just because of this, I the way that it's set up. My sisters are 18 and 17 years older than me, and my brothers are 13 and 11 years older than me. And then there's me with one that died in between the 11 years ahead and me. I was chastised for being spoiled rotten. Whether I really was or wasn't, I really didn't know. But I was chastised for such things just because I was the youngest one. So I feel a little bit like, well, did I do all this, or is it just something that was pushed on me, or things like that? I get along with all my siblings now. It's a lot different than it was back when I was younger, for sure. But it is a very unique thing, and circumstances are such that you learn to appreciate each person for who they are, period, and concentrate on their strengths. And if you concentrate on their weaknesses, then that's your problem, not somebody else's problem.
That's right.
if you're doing it, that's your issue. But that's kind of how I grew up, was that whole idea. I was more probably like Joseph and Benjamin. Not that I deserved that particular thing. It was my placement in life, how I was positioned. But anyway, I get along great with my siblings now. And like I say, I try to concentrate on their strengths and not their weaknesses.
Right. Good point. Good point. Suzanne, you're muted, but you had your hand up before Chris.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
I was the oldest of two, and there's almost 11 years, my sister and myself. And I was raised by three adults. My grandmother, my mother's mother, lived with us. So I had a lot of attention, and, whatever money was extra was available, I would get toys. I love toys. It was, when my sister came along, I had to put down some ground rules with my family. There's no babysitting, no changing of diapers. And as we were growing up, I mean, to me, she was just like this pesky little twerp. I used to tell her all the time I was going to throw her out the window. I think it's funny. Of course, she doesn't. And I never did. And there was such an age difference. I just really didn't pay all that much attention to her. But in her eyes, she used to idolize me because I was her older sister. And later in life, we became very close. And our relationship now is far different than it was growing up. That's
Very
it.
good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing. Chris.
Well, in my case, I was the oldest one of two at the time. And I kind of had to be the responsible one, or my mother more than anyone dictated to me that because I was the oldest one, prudence, love, understanding, and all the other attributes of being a perfect sister was supposed to be me. And obviously, I became very annoyed with having to take care of the child and not necessarily babysit because I was still a child myself. But it was as we go older, if my brother would get in trouble, he'd get away with it. And because I was the nice one, I was the oldest one, I had to understand and all of that. And it really was a burden to me through my childhood to had to make life perfect for my brother, whether I like it or not. But I agree, like Pastor Bruce said, after we got older, many years of disagreements and no talking to each other, finally came to a place where we said, hey, let's get this thing over with. We're getting too old for this. We are very close now, and I know he'll do anything for me, and I will do anything for him.
Very good. I know. Who had their hand up first, David or Ricky? David,
I don't know whether no.
my partner says David did, and then I know Larry and Ricky. So go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. I have something to share with Pastor Bruce, in that I did have an older brother who passed away before I was born. He was born with a congenital heart defect, and then one morning he just never woke up. And we've always wondered about that. But the thing about when we were sitting Shiva for my mom a few years ago, we were actually talking about the various members of our family. And I made the point that I thought that my older brother, Richard, who was always considered the black sheep of the family, never really succeeded in anything, was really the most intelligent member of our family. And my younger brother, Jerry, said, well, how can you possibly say such a thing? And I said, because Richard takes the time to listen. And I've always respected and admired and loved that.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let Larry go.
Larry,
And
go
then
ahead.
me.
Okay, there is, it seems, a tension between sibling rivalry and brotherhood. And an example came to mind is our synagogue recently changed name of Men's Club to Brotherhood. What are the implications of that? But for me personally, I am the older brother, and I think with all these PhD studies by sociologists, the firstborn is considered more responsible, a higher achiever. There are more expectations, and similar to what Chris said, and also the younger one can usually get away with more because parents realize every little thing is not important, that you'll grow up. Okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Excellent points too. Yes, Ricky.
Okay, I'm going to take a totally different stand. I'm an only child.
Okay.
My,
Good.
my ex-husband was an only child. And there were 2 stepchildren involved. And the 2 of us, absolutely, we couldn't understand why they would always, like, whoever was sitting down first, the other one would sit and block the television. It was just this constant little nudgy. But since I never had siblings, my husband never had siblings. It was like, I finally, it got so bad in the car, I put a piece of masking tape down the center of the back seat that they couldn't cross the center line. And we just absolutely couldn't understand. Now, I have 2 children, he had 2 children. And it's like, I don't know, I still don't understand siblings because I wasn't born into. But they say if there's
You
more
never
than
had to
5 years,
share.
I didn't have to. Well, I got all the characteristics. I became the responsible one, the firstborn. I was the baby, so I got, spoiled. I got all the characteristics. And they say that if there's like 5 years or more difference between you and your next sibling up, it's like it's a whole new family.
Yeah.
Because those kids are in school and you're starting the family all over. So I watch siblings and I go, what is going on here? But, it's just because I thought about it many times. What would I have been like as a sibling if I'd had a sibling? And I don't know, my needs were so well met in some areas and not in others. And if I'd had to share, I don't
Right
know if
there.
I could have shared as a kid because I never learned that I had to.
Right.
So it was just I just wanted to throw in and speak up for the only child. And I don't know if it was Monday's child is full of grace, Tuesday's child, whatever. I don't know what day I don't know what day I was. So I don't know, what I inherited, but I got it all.
Okay. Well, that's good insights too. Yes, Don.
Like everybody, except I wasn't an only child, I had a younger sister, but favoritism and in my family was that was kind of the rule. And I grew up my early life in a one bedroom Brooklyn tenement with a family of four. And so we're always short of everything, including affection. And then that went on till much later in life, where it just kept those rivalries are so burned in. You start with that environment that they just keep popping up. So toward my sister, I was my father's caregiver his last 7 years, and my sister, there was a lot of addiction in my family. My sister, who was also addicted, kept trying to get at his meager savings to support her habit. And so I lived with that right to the end. She finally died of ovarian cancer, and then my father passed away. So I've had years now to reflect on what that was all about, because they don't teach that in school, and even reading the Bible, it just all those curses and rivalries and horrible stories. They're just there, I remember reading the first time I read about Noah cursing Ham, or cursing Canaan through Ham. I thought, geez, that's not a great example for how to grow a family. But the thing that kind of mitigated all of that was that after I was divorced, I was the custodial parent for my kids. And so I had a chance to try it myself. And I'm proud to boast that they are the closest, most unrivaled siblings that I could ever hope for. There's never been a harsh word between them. And even they just got back from a fat bike snow cycling trip with their families up in northern Washington. And it just warms my heart when we get together like that.
Very nice. Very, very interesting story. Anyone else? Yes, Larry.
I wanted to follow up what Ricky was saying in regard to only child. When I was in China and they had the one child policy, they spoke about the little prince, that not only the only child, often the only grandchild. And these boys were spoiled rotten. And then also, because women were not valued and were often put up for adoption, the little girls are infanticide. Then they found out there's too many boys and we don't have any girls to marry. And it is not, by not having siblings, they lose a lot.
Yeah, that will be.
I think that all of these are important. The rabbi is going to be breaking away for a while, but I just wanted to ask, is there anyone else who wanted to share? Okay. Okay.
I would like to propose an idea that before you talk about siblings or only children, I think so much depends upon the mental health and the relative safety and prosperity of the people who would become parents,
Right.
as to how things unfold with their own children. A lot depends on what is going on in each of the parents' lives before they procreate. When they then go create a family, I think there are a number, there are a number of other factors that fall into place, whether there is a fracture in the family, a death in the family, brings out different feelings and emotions and sense of duty. When I lived in Texas, a very dear friend of ours had 4 children who were normal and one who was a Down syndrome child. From the day that the Down syndrome child came into the world, the focus was on that child and the other 4 were ignored. One of the children had a lot of difficulties and they sent him to military school because he was totally ignored. So you see how different problems can influence. In my own life, my mother divorced my father before I was 1 year old. Through the grace of God, we lived with my grandparents in a 1-bedroom apartment for 8 years. I was an only child for 8 years, and I lived in an adult-dominated world. And I never really had a childhood because in order to interact with those adults, I had to, become, talk on their level. When Mom remarried, she married a man who was very European in tradition and thought that when you turned 6, you were already an adult. So he talked to me as if I were an adult, not a child. They had 2 children together. When I was 10, I was dying for a sibling because I didn't like being the solitary little adult in the family. And I had a sister, and then I had a brother 3 years later. And I always felt as if I was the second mother to those 2 siblings. I never considered them as my brother and sister because I was the one that took them to the zoo or to a museum or out to play ball. My parents were kind of indoors people. And so my relationship was different. I never had the feeling of jealousy because I felt like I was a parent to them also. So I had a very different situation than other people growing up. To this day, I feel close to my sister and brother, but it's mostly because I feel parental toward them. And I don't think they respond to me as a sister either. I think they look at me as another parent. When Marty and I started dating, they called Marty and me Mom and Dad because we took them out together and had a ball with them. So you see how different things come into play. I also want to say one more thing about only children, because I took a class with a psychiatrist who was talking, the whole class was about only children. And he said, quote, "They are the true wild card of nature and usually become something stupendous and have a sense of responsibility unlike anybody that, you compare to." So, amen.
Well, I was told that an only child never empties her to-do basket because as fast as you start to do things, and that's I'm still that way. Never, my to-do basket is never empty.
Yeah,
That's true. Grace, please.
I love all the sociology and psychology I'm invested with today. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm the youngest, and I had 2 sets of parents. I had an older brother and older sister, and my parents. Very interesting talk and discussion about this morning. I'm still the baby. I'm closer in age to my nephews than my siblings. And in generation wise, I finally was able to establish that I grew up in a different era, and I was my father's desired child because he wanted one more kid. The 2 older ones were not meeting up to his expectations. So they had me, and I broke every rule in the book. It was like, I remember I was 9, 8, 9, 10, maybe 9, 10. My sister was this beautiful girly girl, right? And I'm just a plain Jane. I'm I like black and white and gray and horses and dogs, and just give me that, not people. And to this day, I'm still very much like that. But my sister had this beautiful Barbie doll case with all these dresses and shoes and the kin and everything. And I remember popping the head off that Barbie doll and throwing it across the room and directly at her head. And so I did get away with more because my father was affectionate towards me, changed my diapers, and they saw this. They witnessed that difference. And to the day she died, my sister held this grudge. And my girlfriend and I were talking about her passing, and she says, well, what do you think? She was jealous of you? I said, for 58 years? How does someone hold on to that for 58 years? I just never understood, because I don't know jealousy. I know a little envy from time to time, but I just don't know that feeling. So it was interesting, having two sets of parents. And my brother to this day is still my other dad. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Don.
You muted, Don.
And the gal over here on the right.
Okay.
Sorry. I can recommend a recent book called Fault Lines on family estrangements, which gets into the guts of how these things happen and how common they are. A lot of families just kind of keep it under wrap.
Sure. It's
really?
it's so uncommon. This is 100% of the time. It is because it's obvious from everyone's stories that there were pressures on the parents, there were pressures on each other, and each one is unique in at the timing of these events, and each one is unique in how the reactions had to be dealt with. Some reactions were short-lived, some are a lifetime. And so it becomes, I can understand where you're coming from. The book is very, very important, yes. First Chris, then Ricky.
I think you hit on something really important, because when you become a parent, you first of all, if it happens right after the marriage, you're still adjusting to another human being living with you.
Sure.
You're still not quite knowing what is going on between the two of you. And now you have another responsibility, a baby. And if all of this plays a huge role on that firstborn, because you are the instrumental tool for learning everything that happens within your marriage, within your family, within your economic and physical status. I mean, everything changes. So I can understand firstborn being also very powerful people. Most of us are pretty strong-willed. I guess we feel like we have to defend ourselves at one point. And I'm just thinking on my family complexity, my parents were kind of forced to marry, not because my mother was pregnant, but because my grandmother saw that my father was a good man, and my mother was told, if you want to marry, you have to marry him. No other man is available, because he will provide for you, he'll care for you. Because my father was a wise kid, he really went and got real close to my grandma, because he was crazy about my mom. So that was really different. So my mom was not that excited about being married or having a kid. So at the beginning. So I just thought how important that is. How did my mother view things when I was born? And what did she had to deal with when I was born?
So Ricky?
Yeah, I want to kind of, Grace made me think of something. My ex-husband, who I said was an only child, let's see, we were in our late 30s, early 40s, somewhere in that age. And during the time we were married, he found out he had an aunt that he never knew he had. There had been, this sibling rivalry or whatever, the Hatfields and the McCoys, or the whatever happened between his father and the father's sister. We never found out. But they hadn't spoken to each other for probably 40 years. And to the point that my husband didn't know he had an Aunt Eleanor. You know, it's like families can get really messed up.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Ruth Ann wanted to butt in for
I
a
can
second or say
add something
something.
like that. When my grandfather passed away, I found out that the boy sitting next to me in social studies class was my first cousin.
Very interesting.
I never, until my grandfather passed away, I never knew my mother had two brothers, and that the two women I thought were her sisters were actually not her sisters.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Gail or anyone else? Did anyone else want to say anything? Okay. Just a point. The rabbi had to leave us. They were just notified that a family member passed away. And so our thoughts are, I mentioned, we'll stay in touch with him too. It became, I think it's important. You have heard me say that this book, the entire Torah, is a book on anthropology. It's a book on family dynamics. It's a book on parenting. It's a book on so many levels. And so now I did, the reason I did this exercise, so to get us into a frame of mind that our family, we've strengthened our family by sharing, but also it is important to now understand what's going on in the dynamics of the story here. And I think when we have read this in the past, we never really took all of this into account. We only used our own personal experiences. We have heard similarities and differences from 10, 12 people. And it is become, so we now have to take this into account as we read the story. And the last time we met, we said, we read that Israel loved Joseph the best of all of his sons because he was the child of his old age. Okay. And it also, there was a lot of disagreement between the other sons and Jacob here. The sons were jealous, and we now have more insight into how the jealousy could have arose in the siblings.
I think the statement, he was the child of his old age, bears discussion.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So go ahead.
Don't ask me, just ask everyone else.
Any comments about that?
He was already an old man when he had this child. That's what I interpreted it to mean.
Well, what was Abraham's reaction to this? To have a child at such an old age? And Sarah's, what were their reactions to it?
She laughed.
It was a miracle.
Right. She laughed.
She laughed.
Sarah did. Right.
But they also thanked God.
Right.
Because who in such an old age is going to have children? Okay. Right. And you have, yes, Chris, go ahead.
I'm sorry. You're talking about old age, but it was also a desire. They had no older children, so the desire was so great. Yeah. And that was a promise made to them, which probably they expected to have it early in their marriage or in their lives, than way at the end of it. But I have to say something else about the old age. And now it's because I am, hate to admit it, no, I don't. I am old now too. And there is such a beauty in being our age because you have become wiser, you're calmer, You understand what you're saying, what you're doing. You have a communication with the God, you have a communication with your siblings. All your issues kind of goes ironed down. At least for me, I can say that. So to have a child now, you will be ready for instruction. You'll be ready for relationships. You'll be ready for sharing who has been the master of your life all your life. Instead of mumbling around through life in childhood and not earning a living or doing all the other stuff that will distract you from being the parent that you need to be. And I think being old, that's really would have been a great benefit to have a child. I know that you have the energy to deal with a child, but you will definitely have the state of mind, the heart issues that will be perfect for a child, I think.
Well, good insights, Chris. Very good insights. So here we have a situation. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Gail, please.
I was just going to say that's what grandparents are for, Chris.
That's true. That's true. As grandparents, we run into some very important situations, and as we mature, we find we can be a little more level-headed.
Yeah.
About things. It's true because we've experienced more, and so I think that this becomes this has been a very good exercise as we get into this, and we've tried in the past. We've tried to put ourselves into the minds of the different characters in the Torah, the different people we've encountered, and we suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, in each one of the instances so far, from time to time, they remind us of ourselves.
Yeah.
Not just someone else, but in one way or another, they remind us of ourselves. And I think it's important. So now let's put ourselves into the mind of the favorite son. In this case, and he is now lauding, in a way, his behavior is being encouraged, and he lauds over Lauds over his siblings, and he throws it up to them. Okay, because he thinks he can get away with it, because excuses are made. Oh, he's just the youngest. Okay, so he's given a coat, a very splendid coat, and the other brothers, it doesn't comment about what they're going to receive. Okay, maybe this coat is being given to Jacob is giving the coat to Joseph because he knows that the older brothers will get more. They will have more inheritance. It's not an even distribution. Okay, and so we're going to see how the brothers are going to take this threat and utilize and what they perceive as a threat, and how they are not going to tell Jacob that they feel threatened by all of this, but they are going to take matters into their own hands. Okay, and so we're going to pick up where we left off, Genesis 37, and we're going to start with verse 5. So we've really covered an awful lot, and if somebody else has something to say before we start with verse 5, please raise your hand. And yes, Pastor Bruce.
Just reminding us from verse 4 that when the brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his brothers, they hated him so that they could not speak a friendly word to him. Friendly in this case is la shalom, meaning of peace.
Mhm.
And I think that we have to realize that that's what we've been talking about all morning in some ways already, with all of our discussions about what are some of the destructive things that can happen in a family when we're not speaking at all, or when we're not speaking civilly, or when we're demonizing one over another, or things like that. We just have to realize that in this case, the word friendly, la shalom, is about being peaceful within the family. And then I think when we look at that, in this case, if a parent is favoring one over another, then you get into all of these details that start coming up, starting with verse 5. I think the story sets itself. I was just reminding us of the story that, okay, now that we're starting with verse 5, this is what's already been going on, and they're not even able, there's no peace in the family already when this verse 5 starts.
Right.
That's what I wanted to say.
To underscore this, in the Sforno commentary on Torah, the use of the word debero is what I should say Dabero. I put the emphasis in the wrong way. This is what Pastor Bruce was discussing. And he says, usually this suffix is attached to the verb. It carries a possessive sense, meaning his speech, Joseph's speech. The passage would then be translated, they could not abide his friendly speech. In other words, they even rebuffed every attempt by Joseph to be friendly. That's how strong the hatred had grown.
Mhm.
And hatred will be used multiple times. And you can see how destructive hatred can be. So if we read on, who would like to read at this point? We are at Genesis 37:5. David, please.
Thank you. Before I begin, why don't we do the prayer? Why don't you do the
Oh,
official prayer
sure,
blessing?
sure. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Amen.
I wanted to say that this, as I begin this certainly reminds me of the play that our synagogue loved to do, Joseph and his famous multicolored dream coat.
Yes.
I know.
But here we go. Verse 5. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, the dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves came around about, and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brethren said to them, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his
Okay, let's
words.
stop at that point. Any comments at this point? In the past, I know we have spoken about the sheaves, and we have spoken about some of this in other ways. Any other comments about this? Yes, Don, yes.
I just comment that Joseph must have known how his brothers felt about him, so he wasn't the brightest torch light on the block to tell that dream to them.
His father Jacob had a dream. Okay, the angels walking up and down the staircase, as we come to know, or the ladder, whatever term we want to use. But and we had some discussions about dreams at that point when they appear in Torah. Anyone want to comment about a dream, what it can mean? Is it God inspired? Is it angel inspired? Is it just a human condition that it may or may not come true? Chris?
Is it possible that it depends on the relationship that you have with God or with your father? You know, if it's vanity, or is it that your spirit is more inclined to the things of the world, then then might be a worldly dream. But if it's something that displays the glory of God, I think that could be spiritual and directed by God, definitely.
Okay, Marcia, please. I
Is it
agree, Chris.
is a dream perhaps a foretelling of something that will happen in the future?
It can. And because we know the entire story, we know that in this case, it is. Okay. Sue, I know I can always tell, even if Sue doesn't raise her hand, she has a certain way of going, and then I know she has something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciated, Chris, what you had to say, and Marcia. And I think, given that this is time sensitive, when he makes this statement before his brothers, who are already hating him or despising him, they are certainly not ready to assume that his dream is God inspired. They're going to hear it as vanity, self-aggrandizement at this point in time.
That's right.
Sure.
That's all I want you to say.
Good point. Excellent point. Yes, Gail.
I question why he felt it necessary to relate this particular story to them at this particular time. I find it, like poking the stick. Just keep poking away.
Yes, yes. And, the point that timing is everything is very important. If it was under a different circumstance, it may have been received differently. And so, yes, Pastor Bruce.
In one of the commentaries I was looking at, there was a little side note that said, if human beings all learned from others' mistakes, the world would be a beautiful place. We seem to be only programmed to learn only from our own mistakes. I thought that was interesting, but Joseph, at this point, his brothers hated him because he was telling on them whatever it was he was telling, and they knew that Jacob loved him more, so there was the jealousy aspect of that. And then you're right, the timing of this, like Gail just said, is odd to say the least. But I guess when you have something that's as powerful as a dream,
that's it right there.
I mean, okay, let's pretend like Martin Luther King didn't share his dream.
Right.
Let's just pretend like, oh, he's here, he is over here. I mean, it's Black History Month. Let's just go there for a minute, okay? Let's say he decided not to share his dream. Where would we be, even if he wasn't martyred or whatever? I'm just saying, if that hadn't gone out before all this stuff, that's a huge thing. So I mean, timing is everything, but we don't understand God's timing 9/10 of the time. I don't. Sometimes, not God's timing is not our timing. It's true.
Exactly.
But there's a time for everything, according to Ecclesiastes 3.
Exactly right.
There's gotta be something in here about timing, and that it's gotta be the right time somehow, even though for Joseph's brothers and Joseph seems like it's not the right time, but in God's sovereignty, that had to be done. So he got thrown in a pit later, but we're not there yet, so I'll stop.
Agreed. Okay, David had his hand up, and I think it's Wendy.
Just Wendy.
Yeah, it's me. I'm going to very quickly say, with my family, I was like a middle child, and I got slightly bullied from one of my older sisters all the time. She was 5 years older than me. My other sister was a year older than me, and we were like best friends. So maybe she was jealous of us, because that sibling rivalry, even today, you can feel the difference, but we have made up. But this wasn't what I wanted to say. My in my aunt's family, my mother's sister's family, they had 3 boys and 1 girl. And the girl was obviously their dad's very, very favorite. And he spent so much time about his daughter, so much time about her, that finally his sons looked at him and said, Dad, you're our father too. And maybe that was, Joseph's brother's way of saying, we're your children too.
And they did say it.
Good point.
Yes, yes. Excellent. Excellent, Wendy. Thank you, Ruth Ann.
I wonder here, I mean, if Joseph is already 17 years old, and he's the son, the child of his father's old age, could his brothers have been mad at him or whatever, because they were still being treated like kids themselves? I mean, they should have been adults and gone on and had their own families by this point. And they could really be thinking that Joseph is keeping them back, I mean, from their lives. And now after this dream, it's going to be even more so. That's a good bit of probably why they were upset with him. They were adults already too.
All good points. Yes. Don and then Chris.
Yeah, well, the future, unpredictability, uncertainty. I mean, that's been an obsession for us since we were people. We just don't know what's going to happen next. And, the possibilities are infinite. And that's what we're scared of the future, because we don't know what's going to happen. And so leaders, as Pastor Bruce said, like Martin Luther King, can put a goal out there that helps focus us on a possible good future. It doesn't strike me that Joseph had that intent at all, because his dream is saying that this is going to benefit me, and you're going to bow down to me, and that's not a real enticing dream to anybody else.
Right. That's correct. It's a very good point. Very good point. Chris.
Well, I have to say, I have to agree with Pastor Bruce in regard to the rivalry going on with the brothers from day one. But it was actually before they were born. It was a rivalry between the mothers.
Yes.
Good point.
Yes.
Good point.
Yes.
So they had been bred into that discord from day one. So whether Joseph was the last one or not, they were already fighting among themselves. Well, you're Rachel, no, you're Leah, and that was never solved.
Again, excellent point, because when we speak of Joseph and Benjamin, who are their mothers?
They're Rachel.
No. Well,
No.
Zilpah and Bilhah.
The maid, the servant.
That's right. And so you can understand how a lot of this interplay is taking place. Who has rights over the other?
Sure.
We've already spoken about Reuben trying to exercise his place.
Right.
And to affirm his right as the oldest.
Right.
And his relationship to try to demean
everyone else.
Everyone, the other woman, Zilpah. Okay, so she has no claim. Then we discussed all of this.
Sure.
So this story is already in. Yes, Sue.
There's one other thing. Gail's comment that you're kind of stoking the flames there by his making the comment about his dream, perhaps had to occur in God's plan for Joseph to evolve into a very different person.
Right. And the timing was perfect from God's point of view. The timing was perfect.
Good point, except one thing. If we read on to the next series of verses here, please, let's Let's read verses 9 through 11. So who would like to read? Okay, I see no one else. David, would you like to continue?
Okay, I'm back on deck here.
Good.
God bless you, Tubi.
Um,
Verse
I
9.
think I've lost the place. Okay,
9.
9 to 11.
Nine,
Okay,
yeah.
9. And he dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brethren. And he said, Behold, I have dreamed yet a dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me. Marty, I'm so glad you asked me to read this. I was just studying this a few days ago. The
Okay.
sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me. I've been trying to figure out what the 11 stars were, and I still haven't.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to have some discussion about that. Do you want to stop at that point, and we can?
I can go
Yeah,
on.
yes, let's stop there.
So let's explore this a little bit. Ricky, are you still with us? I don't see you there. Oh, well, okay, because this is her favorite.
She's here. She's there, I'm sure.
Okay, we'll hold off a little bit. Yes, Pastor Bruce, please.
Well, just a couple of things, and I've been looking at this also. Just back to dreams. In the ancient world, according to the commentaries I'm reading too, it's not every dream was taken as a divine message, but usually if a dream reoccurred,
yes,
and then it was presumed to be some sort of special omen. The Talmud actually says a dream not interpreted is like a letter not read.
Correct.
Interesting.
And so when you think about that, and I've always interpreted from the time I can remember a long time ago that the 11 stars were his brothers.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
it
is
was.
very common. There's a lot of commentary to
I mean,
that.
from the time I was little, that
Yeah.
was sort of what I was taught.
That's
It was
right.
that these people were, it was just like the sheaves. It was just a different way of looking at the sheaves, that
Sure.
those 11 stars
Mhm.
were the brothers bowing
Of course.
down to him.
Okay, I
So-
agree. It's very important. David, did you have something astronomical to say about
No,
this?
I had read
Or
that too,
astrological?
that the other brothers could be the stars. They could also have been, as well, the brightest 11 stars in the sky. I'm not sure that is the correct number, but when the stars are just starting to come out at night, you get maybe 10 or 11 that are spotted around the sky that you first see. And you may want to say that what's one star for each of my brethren. And that's also a possibility. And it might have been an effort for Joseph to make peace with his brothers at the time. And I really believe that he was trying to.
Interesting.
Very good point. Chris?
I am sorry. I'm raising my hand too many times, I guess. But I am also acknowledging here that it says not only the 11 stars will bow down to him, but the sun and the moon, who could also represent my father and my mother. I don't know if we're talking
good
about
point.
if we're talking about stars, the mother and the father are also there. And so he's not saying not only you have to bow down to me, but my father, my mother might also be there. I don't know.
Good point. Marcia, you had your hand up too. Excellent point, Chris.
I think I'm a novice, but do we think or know or just imagine that God has written this all in the future and he has to make the future happen? So he has to maneuver the thoughts of his characters. So he
Okay.
has to do something so they'll hate him so much that he will be put away.
Okay. Gail, you have your hand up. Very good.
Well, then it'd be a matter of no free will.
Good point. Very
You
good
still
point.
have to make that choice. you still have to make the choice whether you accept it or not.
Right.
The free will is still there. You have that option. You take it or you leave it. It's still up to you.
So, well, this opens up a whole different debate, because then you have to say, well, was it God's plan that Eve had to eat the fruit in the garden, so he caused that to happen? And therefore, Eve suddenly decided on her own, or did God plan it that way? And no choice. And did Adam have to blame Eve for all of these ills, being found out and all this? After he had choices too, or did God plan it that way? So I don't know. Ricky.
I read a book a long time ago that really impressed me, and it was discussing the intentional will of God. What did God intend? Then whatever happened, and then the consequential will of God. Based on, let's just say, I'll use the vernacular, shit happens. So God intended X, shit happens, but Z is the consequence. So it sort of follows this whole line that it will all, work out, but it's God knows, and listen, in order to lose my past, I must make a future out of it because God doesn't waste anything, is another one of my little.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Point. That's right.
I love it.
Whatever he intended may not happen, but he's aware of the consequences of whatever happened. I'll take the shit out.
Of man. He's aware of man. That might change everything.
We have to remember that this family is living in the land of Canaan at this time. And we have to start thinking now, okay, what influence do the other peoples around them, what do those peoples have on them?
Right.
So getting back to your questions, what does the sun represent? I gave you a lot of clues.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Who are known to be sun worshipers?
I was going to say the Egyptians are even valued.
Very good. Very good.
I was waiting for somebody else to say it, but I thought,
Who
well,
are the moon?
The Aztecs
Who are the
also
moon
sun
or
worship.
lunar worshipers?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And yeah, right. Ooh, that changes everything.
Yeah.
In ancient culture?
In ancient cultures around them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You had other groups of people who worshipped the moon.
Right.
I'm going to defer this question to Ricky.
Yes.
What does the moon represent in Kabbalah?
Right. Oh, Ricky.
Oh, I just reshuffled all my books and that's.
Oh no. Okay. Sue's going to bail you out.
That one I don't.
The Shekinah.
I don't know. What you're asking? Who represents the moon, or
No,
Kabbalah.
Yeah, but
Kabbalah.
you're talking about what Sephiroth represents the moon?
It's the Shekinah.
Shekinah.
Yeah, okay.
And all
Oh.
that's the Spirit of God,
Spirit.
divine flow that's going to come down from higher levels eventually,
down
going from attribute to attribute of God and wind up with man, okay, in different Sephiroth. And so what is happening here, this passage is extremely important to the Kabbalists because there are 12 Sephiroth, each one representing a different attribute of God and each one representing
7, 10, you're talking about, you including that.
but you have to include,
Dot, and what other one?
Is that the
and,
one that's so hard?
and when you get all of this in place, each one winds up representing
One of the,
one of
this
the
God?
important characters in the entire book of Genesis.
Oh my.
And you have Joseph, who will become the interplay between the higher levels and Malchut, or the lowest
normal.
level, which is
Yeah.
mankind.
The mankind.
The sun and the moon reside together. See, they already knew astronomy at this point. Okay. Yes, David.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just reading this, and I guess I shouldn't have stopped quite there, because
I know, but it's okay.
In the next thing, Jacob's father rebukes him, and
Yes.
but I'm actually thinking of a possible scientific explanation of the 11 stars, and I do agree with Pastor Bruce's interpretation.
Yes.
But also, when Wendy and I were visiting White Sands years and years ago, it was at a full moon, and they open up the park at night on a full moon, and of course it probably was in Joseph's dream that the moon was full as well, because he mentions that the moon was there. But I'm thinking that when the moon is dominating the sky, you don't see all of the stars. The fainter ones are not there. So he may have in his dream just seen 11 stars, and that would be a pretty direct interpretation. One star for each of his brethren.
Yes.
And that might have been what he saw in his dream,
Exactly.
maybe or maybe not.
So this has been, before I mention Don, I just want to say that a different branch of our religion then starts to reinterpret scripture based on a lot of this.
Right.
Okay, so we just file it away for information. Yes, Don.
I think bringing the Egyptians in at this point might be a stretch because, yeah, the Egyptians worship Ra, the sun god.
Right.
But then so did the Babylonians, and so did the Sumerians before that. And it gets kind of complicated. It also the 11 stars, like they knew enough astronomy to know that some of these stars were fixed planets, which didn't blink. And they could certainly see Venus and Jupiter and Mars on a good night.
Yeah,
and the ones that blinked were true stars. And then the object of worship were the Pleiades, in which there are 7 stars. And the other thing that gets it even more complicated is the problem with calendars at that time, because the sun, a lot of rituals, the sun's motion, and a lot of the rituals are based on the moon's motion, and it took centuries to kind of work out a compromise there. So I think it's pretty obscure. I mean, I understand the dream, that the great dream, both dreams are pretty graphic, so you don't have to go too far to try to get some meaning there. But specifically assigning the sun, the moon, the stars to function seems a little bit of a stretch.
Okay.
That's good, Donald.
Thank you,
good,
Don.
Donald. But I think that was the Almighty who just was on the phone.
Yes, Gail.
Now, Friedman has an interesting comment or commentary about this.
Please.
When his father says, "What is this dream that you've had?" No one seems to know that the dreams are prophetic, not the brothers, not Jacob, not even Joseph himself. Joseph will be able to interpret other people's dreams, but not his own. Like many of us, he will learn what psychoanalysts knows, that seeing the meaning of one's own dreams is the hardest.
That's interesting.
Very good take.
Yeah.
However,
Perhaps instead of inferring something when he relates this story to his brothers, maybe he's asking them, what does this mean, in all innocence? I don't know.
and that is another possibility. Pastor Bruce, I think you had your hand up.
Well, I was just going back to Gail's comment from before on the free will versus God's direction through the entire thing. And I think I quoted this a couple months ago, but one of my favorite scriptures in the Brit Hadasha is from the book of Romans, and it's 8:28, where it says, all things do work together for good for those that love God and are called according to his purpose. And if we believe that Joseph was called to Egypt to do what he was called to do later, then all these things really do work out together, whether we add the free will or the direction of God in. It's all things are working together for the good of those that love him. And so if you're looking at this family, which we don't know about their true love for God or not, we can sometimes sense it or feel it, or it says something. But you look at that picture and you think, okay, all things are going to work out for good at some point. And certainly by the time we get to the end of this very long story that we're going to be in for months.
We may at this rate. Yes.
I think we're going to be here for a long time still.
That's right.
To me, but when you look at if you go further into the story, you're seeing how things really do work out.
Well, yes,
in the long haul.
Yes, and at this
consequential
point
will.
we can't answer that. At this point, we can't answer that.
No, but I'm just saying
in the context of the whole story
right.
that we've read.
Which is why I brought that particular verse in, because it seems like it makes sense to me in this particular instance. But
okay.
Anyway.
So I have Chris and then
Thank
Ricky,
you.
then Don.
Thank you. I would just like to say to Pastor Bruce, it is also part of the Torah where at the end where they meet the brothers together and they bring the father into the land of Egypt, where they take over, they settle in Egypt, that Joseph does say to his brothers, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. So he forgave them. So
That's
I
right.
just wanted to bring that
Well,
up.
we're going to address this later. We've already approached this discussion about, what we consider good or bad acts and what the outcome may be.
Well,
and
I would just return to that scripture.
Yes.
Susan.
So, but I'd like to, yes, Don, go ahead.
Just real quick. I think any discussion to do with sibling rivalry and predetermination, you have to go back to Cain and Abel. I mean, that's where it started, and only because God preferred a blood sacrifice to a grain sacrifice, and so everything evolved as a result of that. I still don't understand it, but that's what
I know. This is it's a fascinating topic for discussion. Yes, Ricky.
Oh, I was just going to say to what Pastor Bruce was saying, which is that's back to the consequential will. You know, that if we have the patience to get through whatever, the consequence would be God's will. And I remember one time when I had all kinds of things happening in my life, and I was taking a walk on a moonlit night, and in my mind I heard, "Thy will be done," using two wills in there. And it sounds so different from the "thy will be done." It's "thy will be done." And if I don't like it, I get the adjective. But meanwhile, God's whatever, the consequences are going to work out. And I think any one of us can say some event in our life that was so horrific at the time came such a
Exactly.
blessing to us later, gave us our strength, gave us our
Exactly.
courage, whatever. So it might seem like an awful lot of horrible things happen, but if we wait long enough, and I think that's the advantage that Chris was talking about with age, you know, that as we get older, we can look back and see, well, that was pretty awful, but I got through it, and boy, I'm better for it. So this is pretty awful today. I'll get through it. It'll be, you know, okay tomorrow, you know,
That's
type of thing.
excellent point. Very good. Very good. So any other comments, or do we want to read on at this point? Just another 2 verses.
Okay.
Chris, did you say you wanted to do that?
Oh, no, we can go on. Whatever you want to
Okay,
do.
go ahead and read, Chris. Go ahead. Go ahead. Verse 10 and verse 11. We're going to answer some of the questions that were already brought up.
Okay. And verse 10 says, and he related it to his father and to his brothers. His father is called him and said to him, what is in this dream that you have dreamt? Are we to come and your mother and your brothers to bow down to you to the ground? So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind.
Okay.
And that is beautiful.
Comments about all of this. This sort of answers some of the things we brought up. But any comments about this?
Well, he could put it down. The thought was there. What Joseph had just disclosed, it was important for Jacob to consider that that was not an average thing.
Okay. Okay. Why would he consider that? Why would he, what is said here that makes you say that, Chris?
Well, that probably he knew that Joseph was being very innocent in his lifestyle. And when he brings something like this, and I'm just assuming that he was, because he was a carefree person, the way I see that he would go out and chase the sheep, and how his father said, go do this, he will go and do that. He was not a rebellious person in nature. That's how I view Joseph. But at the same time, being so close to his father knew deep in his heart what Joseph could do or would do. And maybe this kind of behavior, like you bowed down to me, was not in not in Jacob's knowledge that Joseph would act that way or say those things. So he cannot take it lightly. What is going on here?
Okay. So here, any other comments before I ask my next question? Yes, Sue.
Maybe Jacob saw a bit of himself in his son at that moment in time. Also,
I like that. Yeah.
I suspect he was reminded of something in himself. And very often the parent who favors a child does so because the child reminds him of himself.
Very good. What is a specific thing that happens to Jacob that reminds Jacob of what he's being told from Joseph? What does Jacob have to think about at this point?
Well, there are numbers.
What is Jacob's experience with dreams?
Mm-hmm.
What does, and we had, yes.
The ladder.
Yes.
The ladder going
yes.
up.
And so now Jacob says, wait a minute here, something's going on.
Failure, right.
You know, here are 2 similar dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And is this dream, as I'm going to use just a different word, prophetic?
Right, that is.
Okay, as mine was.
Right.
And you know, Jacob has experienced. You remember I just tried to defend Jacob's silence with the rape of Dinah. And I
Mm,
said, maybe he's mulling things over. What does
mhm.
this mean? Is this a message? So now he's starting to see, hey, wait a minute. Could these dreams be another message?
Right, right.
So he's not, it doesn't say he's interpreted the dream,
Oh, no,
but he sees a marked
molding it
similarity.
over. Right.
Yes,
Thinking
yes,
about
yes,
it.
yes,
That's what I just read about Friedman, saying no one seemed to understand or know for sure. Is this prophetic or just a dream?
exactly.
They don't know.
Right.
They don't know.
Right.
And we have no way of knowing at this
Right.
point. But what I'm going to do is just to think about how are we going to get God's, he's being reminded of God's prophecy at this point. Doesn't say it. But if there are prophecies, God has made prophecies to Abraham, Isaac,
Adam.
and Jacob.
Noah.
Well, yes, but specifically Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And where are we going to have to go? I've already been there, and I've in Egypt, and I haven't done anything. But where am I going to have to go to fulfill this total prophecy? Is this part of the same prophecy? I don't know if Jacob is thinking in terms of this at this time, but we have to start knowing that we've read the story. We have to start thinking in terms of this as well, being the reader. So I just wanted to point that out. Any other comments at this point? Let's go on a little bit further. Who would like to read? Gail? Ricky, you want to? That's fine.
Yeah, we're at 12, right?
Yes.
Yeah. One time when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flock at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing at Shechem. Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "I am ready." And he said to him, "Go and see how your brothers are and how the flocks are faring, and bring me back word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron.
Okay, let's stop there.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do before, okay, Gail, yes.
I have a question. Go back to 13.
Please do.
And Israel said to Joseph, why is it not Jacob? Why is it Israel at this point?
Yes.
Is interchangeable. It comes and it goes. And it comes and it goes.
So let's explore that a little bit. I alluded to the fact that if we look back on the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, yes, there are dreams, there are wishes, there are prayers, but there's also prophecy involved. Mm-hmm. And what it specifically is in the prophecy that God makes to Abraham, it's not 100% fantastic. We have to go back. We are going to have to go back in time and reread something at this point. Because, and I'm going to take you back to Genesis 15, verse 12.
Okay.
Okay, and what let me read it for the people who do not have this. Verse 12. As the sun was about to set, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a great dark dread descended upon him. And he, being God, said to Abram, "Know well that your offspring..."
I'm sorry, but it says Abram. not Abraham, because remember,
Abram.
That's right.
Hey.
Abram. This is
Abram.
before.
Abram.
That's right. Know well that your offspring shall be strangers in a land not theirs,
Mhm.
and they shall be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation they shall serve, and in the end they shall go free with great old age.
I got great wealth.
Fine. However, I want to digress for a moment, because this is what is probably, this is part of Midrash that has been written about this event in Jacob's memory and the like. However, those of you who are sci-fi fans know a book by the name Stranger in a Strange Land, written by Robert Heinlein. And just a small précis about the book. It is about a human raised on Mars. Interesting that Mars started our conversation. And the person comes to Earth and winds up challenging the customs on Earth that relate to sex, death, religion, and money.
Mm-hmm.
Those of you who remember the book, there was a term that came from that book. You remember a lot of words that we use in the English language have come from previous books. They were invented by an author. The word grok. G-R-O-K. Grok. When I grok this. Or what's the grok of this? What is being said? What is the definition of the term?
The meaning?
Yes.
Is it a meaning?
But more than just meaning, it is deeper meaning.
Yeah, it's
okay.
The hidden layers.
Hidden meaning. Okay.
Okay, so when you grok something, you fully you see not just what on the surface, but you see a lot of other layers.
Okay.
Well, that's the expression. You got it.
What are we doing today?
Yeah.
As all of this prophecy, strangers in a strange land, are going to come to pass. We are grokking, if you will, so we can grok
right.
this whole passage. Yes, David.
Just wanted to say, Marty, that no, this is off the subject, but I cannot recommend Stranger in a Strange Land more highly. It is one of my favorite books.
Yes.
And I've really enjoyed reading it. And it's a wonderful story.
Yes.
And I hope I grokked it, but but
it had a tremendous influence in the world of science fiction. And it's something that being a sci-fi fan, I just had to bring this out. We've discussed Arthur C. Clarke, we've discussed Robert Heinlein now, and there are other authors that
Bradbury.
And we've discussed Asimov and
Bradbury. Don't forget Bradbury.
Bradbury, who lived for a while here in
Can you give us the name of that book again, please, Marty?
Stranger in a Strange Land.
Stranger in a Strange Land.
Okay.
Okay, so this and let's face it, in going through Torah this way, we are strangers in a strange land.
Yes.
And we cover the commentaries and all the midrash and drashes that have taken place. So we are going through this whole process. Yeah,
I'm also very
relate
glad.
to our lives.
that you
Yes,
said
David?
that. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I'm
Molly.
sorry. Please, David.
I really am so glad you said that, but it reminded me that Arthur C. Clarke and I, for many years, had a long email friendship, writing back and forth about all kinds of items, and this lasted for many years, from up until the time of his death, and we just were writing back and forth for a long time. And I know that my dad just loved Arthur C. Clarke. Stranger in a Strange Land, though, is Heinlein.
That's right. That's right. And the asteroid / comet that passed through our solar system from another solar system reminds David, I'm sure, of Arthur C. Clarke's Journey to Rama.
Oh, yes, absolutely it does.
Yes.
And I promise I will now behave myself.
No, but
Don't believe him.
but it is important. You see, that's why these things have to be brought into the discussion, because this is the book we're reading is timeless, because people of all generations have had experiences that are being discussed. That was why the exercise in discussing our family relationships, so we could understand what is going on and what the parent is going through during all of this time. But the parent also has had previous experiences. He had closer ties to his father and his grandfather. Yes, Chris.
I think that the drugging that we are doing with the Torah is becoming alive because of this, the deep part of it. I have read the Torah many times, and it's lately, well, during this group, that I really enjoy it, tearing it apart in order to get those little gold nuggets out of it. And I had gotten a lot of gold nuggets, but my pile is getting high. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just wanted to do that digression a little bit, because it becomes it just becomes very, very important. I see Joanne is trying to link up with us too, but it's just some interesting material that is available to all of us. We don't have to go that far. We don't have to go that far because of our life experiences. And Ricky, I know you love sci-fi too, and that's why I also
older sci-fi. I had a sci-fi section in my my bookstore, and you know, the Ursula, whatever her name is.
Ursula Le Guin. Yes, The Lathe of Heaven.
But some of the newer stuff, you know, just give me Bradbury, Asimov, Heinlein, Clarke, you know, just this handful. That's right. That's all I need. But you know, there's newer stuff that I read, but it didn't stick as much as those early classics. And Asimov was such a genius. I mean, he wrote on so many other topics, mathematics, and so many other areas to his knowledge.
And he too was very prophetic.
Yes.
Because we're seeing what he wrote in years past, in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, wow.
They're coming to be true today.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And in so many ways. Yes, David.
Just wanted to thank Ricky for her comment, and add another personal thing, that Wendy and I knew Janet Asimov very well. In fact, we saw a total eclipse of the sun with her in 1999.
Oh,
yeah, very nice.
Fantastic. But this is it just shows the different influences that make us who we are today. Okay? So hopefully the Torah will have some more influence on us. So it's a little early. What we can do Do you want to stop at this point, or do you want to keep reading about how the story of how Joseph gets into the situation with his brothers in the desert?
I think that's such a good point to stop because we're
Yeah.
gonna keep going.
Sure, we can talk about other things the way we take one word and spend an
Yeah,
hour.
right.
So we can do that because I know I prepared a whole bunch of other things, some from some other rabbis and like that, and I will. What is the wish of everyone? I know two people, say, okay, let's sit tight and hold our breath for a week. What is everyone's wish?
I say we use the time to the max. Let's go till noon and see how far we get.
Well,
I had a question.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Is Purim on the list for next week? Is there something that's happening with that? I just am not sure. So I thought I would ask.
Oh, I'll
No,
send
yeah.
I'll send you the invite.
Okay,
Purim.
I just wasn't sure what was happening next Thursday, Friday.
Oh,
So,
the
that
Purim.
whole.
Yeah, we have Purim.
We have Purim on Thursday. Thursday night, 7 o'clock. We're via Zoom. It's gonna be in two parts. The first part is gonna be from Rabbi Roman, and he's gonna give me a bunch of different YouTubes of other places, how they're reading the Megillah. And it's going to be kind of more of a traditional Megillah reading for the first half.
Okay.
And the second half is going to be a Purim spiel from our new members.
Can we dress up?
David Liebling.
Dress up. But what can I think of their names?
David Liebling.
David Liebling and Laurie Sherman, okay, are going to do a adult. Okay, if this is written for 18 plus, so that you can send, if you have any kids, send them to bed after the first part. And it's a Purim spiel, and I've heard parts of it, I've seen parts of it, and it's very, very entertaining. And just bring your loggers or bring your pill bottles. I was going to say, we were talking about this at the ritual committee meeting, and I said, pill bottles, that'd be great braggers, especially for adults. But it's, he has written a number of Purim spiels, and he said he has some that are for kids and some for adults, and we decided on the adult one. So,
okay,
Bruce, I will send you the invite.
Thank you. I saved all my stuff from last year, so I have it right here.
Okay, good.
I have a whole bunch of stuff from last year, but we're not going to be at the temple.
Right.
Dawn, I know you have your project that you've been talking about, and if any group would be interested in it, it would be this group. So do you want to speak a little bit about it? And if there's an interest, we can schedule it. It doesn't have to be during Torah studies. We'll schedule it for another time. You're on mute. You need to unmute.
Okay.
We'll get to you, David.
Okay, that kind of took me by surprise.
Well, you don't have to discuss it today if you don't want to.
I'll take advantage of it.
Okay.
I had talked about a study topic which involves the Torah and astronomy, basically. And yesterday I had a Zoom meeting with the University of Alaska Fairbanks, in which they were enthusiastic about taking it on as a graduate study program.
Wow.
Multidisciplinary, which was like way more positive than my wildest dreams. So I'm trying to digest that and figure out where to go next with it. But basically, I don't know if I can do this in a couple of sentences, but it's basically that it's connecting the great cosmic events in the Torah and in other religions with actual space weather events. Basically, the solar flares, periodic solar flares, which shoot out big chunks of plasma, which can really devastate the planet, and which appears to have occurred every 12,000 years, like clockwork, going back to, I think, 70 some odd thousand years ago. And so there's a coincidence between the last one, 12,000 years ago, called the Younger Dryas event, and what we read about in the Torah, and which in the New Testament is kind of forecasted in the Book of Revelation. And it's scary stuff, and I can I can understand why it would be subject to denial, because there's not a lot you can do about it except get astronauts off the planet. So anyway, I thought this was kind of wild to present to a university, but it turns out University of Alaska is a center for space weather and plasma physics, and they also have a pretty strong humanities department focused on religion and Native American legend.
So they would, because of the
exactly.
various tribes up there. That's very true.
So I'm going to stop there because I wouldn't know where to stop.
Okay. I know.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Don. And David had his hand up before, and then Ruth Ann.
Yeah, Wendy wanted to know if are we going to read the whole Megillah?
Oh,
That's the Megillah.
It will get read, yes. And the first half should be the whole reading of the Megillah. It should be.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
But as far as just want to say something about Don's class, or his subject here. He had brought it up to the program committee, but I think it's not something that I think the entire congregation would be into. But I definitely think this group that we have here would probably be very, very interested in it.
I will be.
I mean, and if so, like I said, it does not have to be Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock. That's Torah study. But Dawn, I mean, if we could schedule another time, if everybody would be interested in it, there is no reason we can't have, multiple classes.
Sure.
Sure.
Good. I'm all for it. Yeah.
Dawn,
Okay.
Dawn and I were going back and forth in emails, and I told him that this group would probably be the group that would be interested. So Dawn, let's work on that, scheduling something when you're ready.
Well, if anyone
Have an audience.
I'd be surprised if they were, but if they are, I'm happy to get something going.
Okay, Suzanne has had her hand up for a very long time.
I just want to, I just want to say, Don, I'd love to see you put this together, and I would love to be able to participate. I think this is a fabulous topic.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you, Chris. And yes, Gail.
Don, do you have any idea about how many classes there would be? I mean,
not the
4,
slightest.
5, 6.
Probably an eternal class like our Bible, Torah.
I don't have the slightest idea at this point.
Okay.
The University of Alaska was talking about a 2 to 4 year program. But I certainly wouldn't want to do anything on that scale at BSTC.
Okay.
Were they talking about a major in that field?
Talking about it's a graduate, master's, PhD program.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think start off with a course and then see how it goes, and use us as guinea pigs.
That's a good idea. And yet,
Thank you, Don.
was that just a scratch on your brow, Pastor Bruce, or did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say it kind of goes into the next thing. Hey, I'm looking. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering the fields and says, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me
We're
where
going to
they're
have a very
pasturing?"
lengthy discussion. We're going to have a very lengthy
Bye.
discussion about that. And so
Amazing.
that was going to be the question I was going to leave with everyone.
Yeah. Could you tell
Who's
me
the
where they're
man?
pasturing?
Who's the man?
Who is the man?
Right.
Right.
Okay. And that is the question for next week.
There you go. That's good. It's good to
Okay.
do that.
So
leave
I
us
want you
with
to
a
give it some
question.
thought. I want you to give it some thought, because there, obviously, if I've asked you the question, there's a lot of answers that you can come up with. Okay. So I'm going to sign off. I just want to say thank you to everyone. And we had a great discussion. And I think we've come a little closer together now that we know some more about all of our backgrounds.
Thank you, Marty.
So thank you.
Thank you,
Take care and
everybody.
have a good,
Yes,
healthy,
thank
and
you,
safe
Thank
week.
you.
And you too, Ruth Ann. You're
Thank
still
We'll
you.
see everybody
there.
Thursday.
Yes.
Yes.
7 p.m.
So I'll send you the invite.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank
Ruth
you.
Ann.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay.